And so that's what I do. I write the algorithms, I input the data. And it doesn't have to just be satellite images. It can be other environmental data. So right now I'm testing out temperature, precipitation, carbon stocks, nitrogen stocks, things like that, which are known to influence this invasive shrub.
Welcome to Coffee and Geography, where my guests and I geek out about the world and everything on it, discovering that we are all geographers in some way, shape or form. I am your host, Kit, and my pronouns are they, them or she, her. So settle down with a brew, hit that subscribe or follow button, and enjoy the listen.
This podcast is sponsored by the World Energy and Meteorology Council, or WEMC for short. WEMC is an international organisation focused on weather and climate data to support energy transition, and we also work with educators. WEMC have created Teal, an easy-to-use free visualisation tool that enables you to explore climate variables for the past 70 plus years. Get started at tealtool.earth. Find us at wemcouncil.org and follow us on Twitter at wemcouncil.
Hello everybody and welcome back to Coffee and Geography. We are moving swiftly on with the guests here after the GA conference a few weeks ago. Please do give that a listen if you haven't done so already. And after my jaunts to Qatar with Emily and Massachusetts with Adina and Kelly, I'm coming back to the UK. Tired and jet lagged. Well, this is all proverbial because I've actually not gone anywhere. I'm just, virtually. But back to Maidstone in the United Kingdom. Millie Harding, how are you doing this morning?
Yeah, I'm doing well. It's really nice and sunny at the moment, so it's pretty sort of pleasant to be up right now.
It really is. So this is really interesting from a meteorological point of view because it's not, well, here in the east of England, you're down there in the southeast. It hasn't rained at all for 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, I think. Have you had much rain?
I don't think so. I've moved back up to uni, so I'm back up.
Oh, you're back up there. Okay, so you might have a slightly different weather than us then.
Yeah, I don't think it rained very recently. But yeah, it's been pretty sort of sunny the past couple of weeks, which has been quite nice and quite unusual for being sort of so far up north.
Oh, this is very true. Yeah, and it's quite interesting. I know the farmers down here in I almost went farmers. I just did. The farmers here in East Anglia are a little bit nervous of how dry it's been because when it gets dry in the east of England, it gets really dry. What have we done? It's classic. We're back in the UK, and the first thing we do is talk about the weather. Okay, let's introduce you, Millie. So Millie has just finished her degree at Durham University, which is why she's not down in Maidstone at the moment. She's back up north. Okay. In geography, amazing. Millie's dissertation looked at how the current subsidy system affects farmers. So it was completely coincidental I mentioned farmers and how changes would impact them. Millie is currently working on a project based on the work that she did as part of the DaRin Butz Internship at Harvard University. Did I pronounce that right?
DaRin Butz. Yeah.
I know I pronounced Harvard University correct. And this project uses machine learning algorithm to predict the location of an invasive shrub in the Alaskan Arctic. And the team were able to achieve proof of concept. And so they are currently planning fieldwork for summer 2022. Amazing. So you haven't been to Alaska, but
no.
You're going to Alaska?
Yes.
Or
we're hoping.
You're hoping, right?
Yeah, it's very expensive to go do field work, so we're
I can imagine
grabbing money from various scrounge up. But yeah, so we're still planning to go this summer, which is very exciting.
Oh, amazing! We'll come back and speak about that in a bit more detail. Right then, so I have got my cup of tea. It's been a challenging morning, but it's okay. Sometimes you do something. So I am having my third cup of tea already. But what have you got, Millie, with you this morning?
I haven't managed to have a cup of tea. Usually I'll have my one sort of allotted cup of tea a day. But I've just got some water at the moment, which is not sensible. Very interesting.
Yeah, you're very, very sensible there. What kind of tea do you usually drink then? Is it you?
Yeah, no, I've got a specialty.
Specialty.
Yeah, it's by the Brew Tea Company.
English breakfast brew tea company. And I love it. At the bottom right, so Millie just showed me the box here. Proper tea bags, it says.
Yeah, it's really nice. And it's definitely a bit more expensive than sort of your average tea, but I only have one cup of tea a day, so it's sort of like it's okay. It lasts me a while.
Yeah, I'm the kind of person who will reuse tea bags until the tea tastes as water. And then I'll be like, okay, perhaps it's now time except for this morning because it's been a hectic morning. This is actually my third proper tea bag. So pretty cool. We'll have to look that one up, stick it on the coffee and geography map. I haven't mentioned the coffee and geography map very recently, so people should know about it. So what will happen, Millie, with that is that we'll stick the company and if I can source the tea, where it comes from, both those will go on the coffee and geography map with your location. And the idea is for teachers and students, or just anyone who's interested, to look at this map and see like the distribution of guests, see the distribution of coffee or tea growers, where the companies are based, and for them to explore their claims to sustainability. So when we brand drop these folks, it's to investigate them, not to promote them.
Yeah. Oh,
and if they're sustainable, these listeners are going to want to buy their products, so they better be sustainable. So thanks for sharing that, Millie. Right, so you're not. As we already mentioned, you're not down in Maidstone at the moment, but is that your hometown? That area of southeast England?
So I have a very complicated.
Oh god, this is going to be amazing. Okay.
So I grew up in southeast London, and I lived there till I was like 10. Then we moved out to Kent.
Okay.
Lived in Tunbridge for a couple of years. And now we live out like just outside of Maidstone. So yeah, it's a bit of a sort of journey, but yeah.
So you've gone, you kind of like slowly pulled southeast, and then you kind of jumped all the way up to Durham.
Yes.
So, and yeah, my family's migration pattern throughout a few generations was quite similar, kind of like slowly move. It was like Ipswich in Suffolk, then kind of down, then it was Reading, and then East London, and that's where the Cockney background comes from, and then me up here. But that's quite a fair bit. I mean, just coming from, it doesn't look like much on a map from that part of London out to Tunbridge and then out, and then out to Maidstone. You're just a little bit. But tell me, like, do you have any like memories or anything? Because you said you moved out of London when you were 10. Where you kind of thought, wow, this is different, like living in Tunbridge, living in Kent, compared to London?
I was appalled when I turned up to Tunbridge. I remember just being like, where am I? Like, why have you taken me to this place? Like, I think looking back on it, now that I'm older, like, I think it was like a really good thing that we did move, because around where I was, like, it was literally like some of the worst like secondary schools in London.
Oh yeah.
And like consistently, and it just has never gotten any better. So like I think it was the right thing to do. But yeah, at the time I was like, oh my god, where have you taken me, or why have you done this? But yeah, I think it was a good thing, and also in some ways it was quite good for when I was older and coming to uni, because it meant by the time I got to uni I was actually very okay with moving myself somewhere completely new,
right,
and just going. Whereas I know that like sort of just through people that I knew from school and stuff, like a lot of people did find it difficult to do that because it was the first time they'd ever moved in their lives. And so it's a big thing moving for the first time and having to like leave everything and go somewhere new, regardless of sort of what age.
So you would have been to your primary school in London, and then your secondary school experience would have been out in Kent, and then so you feel that kind of moving, that transition has actually helped you to kind of, do you think, this is going to be a tough question because I don't usually ask what if questions, but this is just interesting I think for people to listen to, because we do have a lot of educators listening, and a lot of educators, for the vast majority for the right reason, will try and push their kids to university and dispel myths about university, that it does sound like it's expensive, etc., but that's for another I think for another time. I'll just say Martin Lewis, money saving expert, student guide, all that kind of stuff, amazing about university fees and whatnot. Do you feel you would have maybe ended up at university at all if you'd stayed in London, or you would have done if maybe, but it probably would have stayed local. You probably would have went to a London university. I mean, can you even answer that? What if hypothetical?
A little bit, I think, because like the 11 plus is like a big thing both in Kent and in London.
Really?
Yeah, and I'll explain a little bit about it because
Sure.
like, I didn't realise that people didn't know until I came to uni, and they were like, "What's the 11 plus?" And I was like, "Oh," but the 11 plus is a test that you take when you're supposed to be 11. I was 10. You take it in your final year. It kind of varies by county, but I took English, maths, non-verbal reasoning, and verbal reasoning. And if you get over a certain amount of points, you go to a grammar school. And that's how they saw the education. So I think if we'd stayed in London and I had gone to a grammar school, then yes, I would have gone to university. And I don't think that my trajectory would have necessarily been much different in terms of going to university. Maybe I wouldn't have done geography, I don't know. But I think if I hadn't, then I really don't know whether I would have gone to university or if I would have been like at Durham.
Wow, that is. I'll tell you what, that is interesting, and I'm going to admit my ignorance here because I honestly believed the 11 plus was a thing of the past, a part of the the whole UK education system where it was a way of segregating people on there. I did not realise that it still took place in some places.
Yeah.
Wow, yeah. That is incredible. I don't know how I feel about that, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because I'm a firm believer that everybody has the potential of achieving great things, and some of those great things may not come down the academic route, but they may need the support of a college, further education, or higher education establishment to fulfill that potential. And of course, another myth is that if you're going to university, you have to have the top grades. You have to be, academic. You've got to be studious. Whereas through the job that I do at the moment now with the University of East Anglia, but I'm part of an impartial project to try and raise aspirations for any higher education, not just the UEA. I've very quickly realised that you don't need to be academic. And like, for example, we spoke to Caris Marianne, who's an ex-student of mine. She's the same age as you, and she has a working class background, bright student, bright kid, very hardworking, but never really thought herself that she was university material. But when she wanted to do it because she's that driven, but when she got to sixth form, she thought academia is not for me, but I still want to. And now she's ended up at university and what she's doing, and it was perfect for her because she ended up doing more kind of practical based stuff and research based stuff, which suited her better than just the pure cognitive academic stuff. And she's thriving now. She's doing a PhD.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I just really, and it just so goes to show, doesn't it, that you've just said that how your life might have diverged so much if you fell one side of the fence or the other, or maybe if you didn't move. So thank you for sharing that with us. So you did move. How much of the East London, Maidstone, Tunbridge did you take up to Durham with you? Like, did you get there and do you feel a bit out of place, or do you feel actually at home? You felt welcome? How did that feel when you got up there?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, because like, how am I? I'm nearly like 22 now. So actually last year was the first time that I'd lived out of London longer than I'd like been in London.
Okay, yeah.
So like, I tend to just say, I'm from like Kent, and that would usually suffice because like no one knows like anything in Kent unless they live there, or they have friends who live in Kent. But yeah, I think it was fine. Like I didn't have too much of a problem like in terms of socially fitting in. I actually found that I really struggled with like imposter syndrome when I started.
Right. Okay.
Because like I got like one GCSE, one A star at like GCSEs. The rest were like just A to B. So like fine, but nothing amazing. Certainly nothing that you would normally get from like Durham students. And then I scraped my way into Durham and like really scraped my way in. I got 2 A's and a C, and I got my C in art. And thankfully the department just like didn't pay any attention to that. But my first couple of weeks, people were like, oh yeah, I got like, 9 A stars at like, GCSE. 3 A stars at A level. I remember like they were going around and I was just being like, please do not like ask me what I got, because I was so like, oh my God, like all these people got such amazing grades and I just did not at all. And after the first like assignment, it was fine. And to be honest, it was more within like my like college. So Durham also has a similar college system to like Oxbridge. But yeah, after we all settled in, it was fine. But I remember being like, oh my God, no one asked me, no one talked to me about grades. And like that was really hard. And that was not something that I was expecting. But yeah, like it was a very sort of brief amount of time. And then, yeah, I think the only other time I sort of severely struggled with like imposter syndrome was after I got my degree results. Because like I got 2-1 and it was fine. And I had some stuff happen during my degree, which meant that I nearly like full out failed my my second year. But I'd also been admitted to go to Harvard for that internship. And so incredible. It was a very like weird time. But yeah, so I saw loads of people getting like firsts and stuff and like going into jobs, and like obviously I was very pleased because I was going to Harvard, but I also really struggled because I was like, oh my God, like, you know, I'm going to Harvard, but I haven't got a first. Like, you know, was I still good enough to do what I wanted to do afterwards? And like, obviously the answer has been like, yes, and it's been fine.
Oh, congratulations. I'm only meeting you for the very first time and I really feel proud of you. You know, that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. I know that there's going to be a lot of people identifying with what you just said. Me especially. My circumstances were almost identical to yours in terms of not doing well at my GCSEs for various reasons, only scraping into university, feeling like I didn't fit in to start with because of like all these people. You know, I got what did I get for my GCSEs? For my GCSEs, I got 3 A's, 4 B's, 2 C's and a D. And for my A levels, in different circumstances, a different world, I would have got a lot better. I was estimated at least 3 B's and I got 2 C's and a D, geography, physics and IT. And I failed maths, so I had to drop maths at AS level. So when I went to university, I was like, I had what am I doing here? What am I doing here? And I just realised that actually, after a while, that imposter syndrome never really goes away. But after a while, you think, actually, I am welcome here. I can do it. And I was one of only 2 people in my atmospheric physics course in the second year to get on this really tricky assignment, which involved like differentiation equations and stuff like that, to get 100%. So I was like, I don't even know how I even managed that. So that imposter syndrome, Millie, really doesn't really go away. You're always going to have that because, but what I try and do, I try and flip it and think, why am I having imposter syndrome? Is it rather than thinking, surely I'm not good enough to do this. Surely I've just fluked this. Surely I'm winging it. Sure, all those negative things. I try and flip them and go, no, why am I feeling like this? Because this is a product of me working hard, of my journey that I took to get here. I know that I've earned this as much as anybody else has done. And if I wasn't meant to be here today, I wouldn't be here, kind of in an academic sense or a career sense. So congratulations on that journey. And it's character building. It really is character building. And yeah, because when people say Durham and Harvard, they're like, well, yeah, of course you got like tons of A stars or 9s, or 8 and 9s as that it would be now. Of course it would be. So teachers listening again, okay, let's try and, I was guilty of this as well to some extent. Let's try and not push our students to think that the grades are be all and end all, because Millie is demonstrating if they're not getting the grades that they feel they deserve, they could still go out and do amazing things. So, and you are doing amazing things. And I've deliberately done a segue here because this amazing thing, which is you've just mentioned about being accepted into Harvard University. I want to talk about this. This is going to sound so cool. Machine learning algorithm to predict the location of an invasive shrub in the Alaskan Arctic. Okay. I know what machine learning algorithms are because I listen to, and I think you'll love this, BBC Digital Planet. It's a really good podcast. And actually, they have quite a lot of features about machine learning and AI and stuff like that. So I think that's be worth a listen. And I've mentioned them so much; they got to give me another mention on their podcast now. It's like that's the third time I mentioned them. So for people who don't know, explain what machine learning is.
Yeah, sure. So machine learning is basically the idea that you can tell, like an algorithm or basically like a formula that you want a certain outcome. So in my case, the outcome we want it to select where it thinks a specific shrub would be located in time and space. And so there's various different ways of doing it. So I'll just talk quickly about the ways that I'm focusing on. So I use random forests and support vector machines. And so random forests are exactly like the sound. It's lots of like trees, sort of inverted commas, that make decisions about what they think the image should be, or what they think the classifications should be. And so broadly what I'm using are classification algorithms to sort of classify images, satellite images in my case. So I basically feed the algorithm the satellite image, and I say, okay, so I'm going to use random forest. So I want the random forest to identify where it thinks this invasive shrub is, and it creates loads of like trees, and all the trees vote on what they think each chunk of image is. And so I feed it 7 different classes ranging from like water, invasive shrub, sort of other tall shrubs, because we're looking at the Alaskan tundra, like road, rock, snow, things like that. And then what it'll do is it'll run the image like through the algorithm, and the algorithm goes, okay, right, so everyone together, like what do you all think this image is? And so sort of spits out an image at the end, all nicely classified for me. And when I feed in the information, usually I just give it little sort of like reference points on an image just to say, this is what you should be looking for. And so that's sort of how random forest works. Obviously, it's a little bit more like complicated than that, and there's a lot more like technical stuff behind it. But
sure,
at the broadest level, that is how it works. And so it's quite nice. It's a very sort of easy classifier. I quite like it. And then on the other side, you have support vector machines, which is basically a more efficient way of classifying images. It's considered a more efficient classifier. And what it does is it basically says, okay, between these data points, like what is the furthest distance away? And that's where it creates like a classification boundary. And that's how it decides like what gets sorted into what classification like category. And then we'll split out an image at the end as well. And so that's what I do. I like write the algorithms, I input the data, and it doesn't have to just be satellite images. It can be other like environmental data. So right now I'm testing out like temperature, precipitation, like carbon stocks, nitrogen stocks, like things like that, which are known to influence this invasive shrub. It's called alder. I realise I haven't actually said what it's called. It's called alder, and it's known to like influence where alder is located across the landscape in sort of like previous literature where people have gone and like actually physically sampled the different conditions. And so, yeah, it's quite like an interesting thing. It's quite new within general, like, I guess, remote sensing. Like when I say new, I mean like sort of last 10 years or so. Geography has quite a long history, so things when you say new, it doesn't necessarily mean recent.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's really interesting. Just like I'm not a massive like computer science person, so it's been like quite unusual like learning about all of this. But I really enjoyed it, and you know, gotta love a map. You know.
Yes.
It's always very exciting for me.
You'll have lots of fans saying that. Don't worry. Hi folks, a chance for you to recharge your brew, but also a polite prod to remind you that it's so easy to support this podcast.
Simply liking, sharing, rating and reviewing means that it will get on more people's radar. Also, there are a few links down in the description which may be of mutual benefit. Please do check them out.
On your Google form, on the Google form for the podcast, you said that you understand the world has been shaped by geography and whatnot, and you love the fact that geography in a certain way and the way you think through geography is quite unique from other disciplines, and that is just such a perfect way to kind of describe that. And it's because, and you know what, the other thing that I thought about when you were talking there, when you mentioned about alder, of course it's like, yeah, in the Alaskan tundra that would be an invasive species, whereas I've got alder in my garden, and where we go out in the States with the family, there's plenty of alder around. That's where it belongs, But now I'm thinking that just for podcast listeners, that was my youngest knocking on the living room window. Hello. Okay. So I'm not editing that because sometimes those can be cute. So Kai is in his tiger suit and he's poking his stick at me through the window. Right. Excuse that little interlude, everybody. So I've lost my train of thought. So yeah, and then I'm thinking now, because especially in places like in Montana, and which is where I go to quite a lot, and then in Canada, I can just now picture that creeping up into Alaska, moving itself north and westwards. So that's first interesting, how things that we see around us in our environment that could be invasive in other environments. So that's the first thing that came to mind. And then the second thing that came to mind is that we're all worried and nervous about AI and machine learning, and then this kind of like AI singularity where robots take over the world. But actually, we're kind of like training them to do these kind of tasks for us and maybe spot patterns and spot things that the human eye can't. But it needs our input to train these things. I don't know if this is the case with your one, because I've heard a lot with machine learning that it reaches a critical point where it can now teach itself, which I guess is what people are worried about in the sci-fi world. Is this the case with your algorithm, or have you got to keep feeding it and teaching it, or is this going to be a point where you reach that bit where the AI will turn and say, right, okay, now thanks for teaching me. I now know what I'm looking for. I can actually now continue to say, well, teach myself to say, if I see this thing on this image or this temperature data, it's probably this, and no, I'm going to correct myself. Does that happen with your one, with machine learning, or?
So yes and no. So
okay.
Yes, in terms of like, I will feed it an initial like image and say, look in these polygons because this has all the data that you're looking for, and then it will sort of train itself, and then it'll spit out a final model, and then I use that model and apply that to a new area or a larger area of the Alaskan tundra. But like, it wouldn't do it unless I ran the code. Like, I would have to sit there and press like command enter. Deep learning is more of the stuff where it can teach itself and it can do that recursive sort of like thinking, and especially AI as well, with like natural language processing models and things like that. But yeah, no, mine is like the very sort of basic, like, write the code, press enter, run it, and, doesn't do any sort of independent stuff by itself.
Cool. And good example there of coding, computer science and geography all mixing together, and why coding is so important. Yeah, and just wanted, for people of my age and older, like, I just didn't want, I want people to think, is this kind of Skynet from Terminator or something like that? Like, no, no, it really isn't. But that's just so fascinating. So, okay.
Well, nothing published has come out.
Okay.
Doesn't mean it hasn't happened, just mean it hasn't been published.
Yep.
Has sort of mapped where alder is, because in Alaska, because geography does not exist as a discipline in the US.
In the United States, yeah.
And just unbelievable, but it doesn't exist, and they don't do GIS. And so it is that combination of my colleagues' ecology sort of knowledge plus the GIS and remote sensing and coding that we both bring to the table that has allowed us to sort of do this project.
And then, of course, coming to the reason why we do these kind of things, which is what gives geography its power and what it can bring to the world. Because you mentioned a few variables there, which are changing in Alaska, and Alaska, of course, is one of the places in the world where they're changing quite rapidly. Things like temperature. So, because this kind of work is multidisciplinary and it's collaborative, you have so many different experts who come in and work on this kind of stuff. I'm not sure how much to an extent you can answer this question, but because there might be another team who takes this on. But obviously you're going to have a preamble and for your abstract say why you do this. So why is this important, this work? Why is it that you are looking at this invasive species, in this case alder, in the Alaskan Arctic? What's the point, basically? Why do we fund these kind of things?
So I think the really interesting thing about alder is that it fixes nitrogen from the atmosphere. So it takes nitrogen and just sort of as it floats around in the air, and then fixes it into a bioavailable form using a sort of fungi that it lives in. It's root nodules that it coexists with. But the reason this is really important is because the tundra has been traditionally nitrogen limited. So only nitrogen fixing, other nitrogen fixing shrubs can exist there, and generally have not existed as high because they can absorb nitrogen and fulfill their own sort of nitrogen needs. But alder also leaches quite a lot of nitrogen into the surrounding soils. And so that means you can get other plants that would have never normally existed in the Arctic.
Okay.
But because it's warming and because there's more nitrogen, you're getting all those other plants coming up and colonizing the Arctic. And so that's eradicating stuff like lichens.
Oh my goodness!
Sort of native species to the Pan-Arctic, I guess, because it's happening in northern sort of Fennoscandian Russia. It's happening in Canada as well. So that's why it's a really big problem. And there seems to be implications for caribou and
Of course, yeah. So you've got this. Then you'd have this. You could potentially have this bottom up trophic cascade then, which for what people not sure what that is, it's when you get a change in, if you picture, you can go back to school, if you picture this, your trophic levels of an ecosystem. So you've got your decomposers, and you've got your primary, your plants, and then you go up the food chain, up if you so wish. The bottom up cascade is when something down the bottom changes substantially, which it has a knock-on effect up the ladder. And if an example of a top down trophic cascade is, for example, removing keystone predators like wolves from Yellowstone, and then it has an effect the other way. I didn't know that. So in other words, alder is almost like a catalyst for change. If it establishes itself, other things are going to go. So alder's basically I'm here, folks. I found this lovely new place. Come join me, basically.
Yeah.
So, and then that will accelerate these cascade changes.
Mm-hmm.
And we know, as you just said, we know how fragile that these environments are. So Siberia, Alaska, all these tundra areas, and of course all the work that they've been doing, nature, with regulating different cycles, natural cycles of our biosphere, they're obviously going to be impacted.
Yeah.
I mean, so that's really fascinating. So again, I'm going to say it, Millie, that's pretty proud of you, because that is pretty impressive, important work that you're doing. And it's amazing that all this stuff goes on, really.
You have to thank my colleague for that. That's mainly his sort of stuff. He's a sort of hardcore ecologist who's like very fascinated by alder and like the sort of nitrogen fixing aspects. He's just sort of taught me all about it, so now I know.
Go and give him a name drop.
Oh yeah, sure. He's called Calvin Heslop. If you we have a project like Twitter. It's called it's like at Alder in Arctic.
We can
and we're
right.
both tagged in
Alder
the
in Arctic. Follow that, everybody. That's it. We can keep up to date with how you're getting on. And as we've already mentioned, of course, it is a collaboration. It is a team effort. There's different levels of expertise, because if we all try and did this stuff on our own, science and geography wouldn't progress further. So, right. Okay, one last thing before we finish off then is, it's just a lovely thing here. As I put, you struggled to put a non-geographical thing in the non-geographical box, right? Which is fine, because it is a bit of a trick question, to be honest. Because you said here that I said, can you say one thing that you can't relate to geography? And you put, I love meeting up with friends and catching up over dinner, because we're pretty scattered now. Now that we've graduated, and it's so lovely to come back together. So yeah, I would have like got to that box and go like, what the hell do I put? But yeah, so obviously that's very important to you. You're making sure that you can catch up with friends and dinner. So. And you went out this morning for a drink, I believe, just a bit of coffee and whatnot, or tea.
Yeah, just walking around Durham with a friend.
Oh, that's so lovely. So, okay, how are we going to approach this? I can't approach this, Millie, in a non-geographical way. No, I submit. I give up. Okay, so friends. Then you don't have to name your name. You can name drop if you want. So your friends then, what parts of the country, or maybe even the world, are they from that you hang out with? If you want to name drop, you can. You don't have to. You can just say where they're from.
I'll say where they're from, because I don't really sort of
we don't have any. We can't assume consent.
Yeah. So the person I met up with this morning, they live in Newcastle. So we both did geography at Durham, and that's sort of how I met them. My other friends, most of them are down like south, so there's where I went to school, they're all like really close together. So there's like 3 schools, and they're all like, there's 2 girls' schools and 1 boys' school. And most of my friends who are currently in the south are people that didn't go to my school, but like I met at university, and then I met their friends, and now we're all sort of friends because we like basically all had the same sort of experience growing up, going to all of those schools, which is really nice. So they're all sort of down south. I've got one friend who's like in the very north, like up towards sort of like Scotland, because they're on placement. A lot of my school friends are engineers, so
those engineers.
Oh yeah, I know. They used to tell me things. I'd be like, okay, that's nice. So yeah, I think they're like the furthest away, and then everyone's sort of like down south, either at university or like working sort of jobs at home or in London.
Yeah, something, because in London, of course, you would have had people who were quite diverse, but they were from a very maybe set community with a little bit of mixing from other communities. But yeah. How does it feel to kind of like have all these different people from different parts of the country? Has it kind of enriched you as a person? Have you like picked up something? Has there been like really good friends from other part of the country? Like maybe picked up their quirks or something like that?
Durham as a place, not as a place, as a university, is very much like the south in the north. So I'd say all bar one of my friends from Durham live in the south normally.
Okay.
And so, for me, it was actually it didn't change a lot of things.
Invasion of the Southerners.
Yeah. And when my school friends and me, we went to uni, I went the furthest away, and so it was quite nice. Obviously, I picked Durham for a reason. I really like it here. I'm very sort of pleased that I came. But it's also a very quirky university in the same way that Oxbridge are.
Right.
And so sometimes I'd be saying things, my friends would be like, what are you on about? I'm like, you have this? They're like, no. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. But yeah, I think it's nice to be able to spread out and then all come back sort of together. And I think everyone anyway will end up moving sort of as time goes on, and as we all go sort of forward in our lives. I don't think that I will stay in one place forever. Once I finish uni, especially as I want to go and do research as a career. So I know I'll be hopping around quite a lot. So in some ways I'm kind of pleased that we've all separated and then for the most part come back together, because it means I know we can do that sort of distance thing, and it's not going to be oh well, we stop seeing each other in person every week and we stop being sort of friends. It's no, we are friends because we genuinely want to be friends.
Yeah. And of course, we've got things that we're doing right now, aren't we? Like virtual communication and whatnot.
Yeah,
that's lovely. I love that kind of kind of sense of you've got a really good, strong friendship from where you're from. You kind of all go away, you do your own thing, and you come back with all these fresh. And it must keep like the friendships and dynamics quite fresh and whatnot.
Yeah.
And it's lovely to see how your friends change and maybe the new dynamics between the friendship group kind of like manifest themselves.
Yeah, I think it's quite funny because like my best friend from like university, they went to one of the secondary schools, like because Tunbridge has like 3 grammar schools very close together, and everyone like knows everyone, but we never met. And it was only when we came to the post offer day at Durham that we met.
Yeah, that happens.
So again, like when we came like fully, I mean, everyone received their offer and everything. I was like, I know you. Like, come here. We're gonna be friends. And so we ended up being friends, and then it turned out that I knew their friends from when we were at school, and we both groups of friends have been to like parties and stuff. So I like rocked up to a birthday party, and I was like, hello.
Yeah, that's true. It does happen, doesn't it? But the degrees of separation do seem to shrink. You go to a university of most sizes, like the size of Durham, size of UEA, Oxbridge, whatever. There's probably someone there who you're only maybe 1 or 2 degrees separated. Yeah. It's surprising how closely linked we are all together. I don't know. This might be a quote, a myth, but I think there was some statistic out there like everyone in the world is only separated by like 6 degrees of separation or something like that. I don't know whether that's true. I don't know whether I heard it as one of these Facebook science kind of things. I don't know. Someone let us know if that's true or not, because it wouldn't surprise me in a way, bearing in mind what you just said, bearing in mind like I spoke to someone at the GA conference from Harlow in Essex, where I'm from, and it turned out this didn't make it onto the podcast recording, but before we chatted, we had a chat, and we found out that the person who was manning the stall for Oxford University Press is related to someone who used to work with my dad as a police officer. So, exactly, there was only 1 or 2 degrees of separation there, so it does happen. It can happen. Right, Millie, this has been so fascinating. It's been lovely getting an insight into you personally. It's been lovely to hear about this exciting stuff that you're doing. And folks, in the description, you'll find the link to that Twitter handle for that work, because that just sounds so fascinating. Everyone I know is going to keep an eye on that. And geography teachers, they're kind of probably going to look at that and think, I'm going to make this into some kind of resource. Can't let you go without doing We Are All Geographers, where we're going to link you to our previous guests. The wonderful Adina and Kelly last week. Wonderful couple from Massachusetts, States. It was such a delight to talk to. But they thought that the word that they're going to give you, Millie, is the word course. So chat for 30 seconds about the word course. Okay?
Yeah.
So, and then you get the chance to come up with your own word. So I'm going to set my timer up so you know when 30 seconds is up. And when you're ready, Millie, you can just start and tell 30 seconds on the word course.
Okay. I think that geography as a A-level course and as it's taught in schools is actually really, really different to how it's taught in universities, and it makes me so mad that it's so different, because geography at university is such an expansive, such an interesting subject, and I feel like I know they have to learn like the basics to get to A-level and beyond, but it makes me so mad because geography at university is so interesting, and there's so much interesting things going on that they just don't tell you about at A-level. I wish they did.
Time's up. You took a very personal approach to the word course there. So course as in a learning course, like a teaching course. Yeah. Right then, your turn. So you can come up with a word for our following guest to speak for 30 seconds. What do you reckon?
I'm going to say map, because, that's what I spend most of my time sort of making.
It's so, this is the 45th or 6th episode now, and I don't think anyone has used the word map yet. I'm like, this is a geography podcast. Why hasn't no one said the word map yet? So thank you for that one, Millie, because it needed to be said at some point, and you're the person who's done it. Right, amazing. Okay, we've already given was it Calvin a shout out?
Yeah.
So we're giving Calvin a shout out, who sounds like a wonderful colleague to work with. You've kind of, without naming anybody, you've mentioned some friends, but is there anybody else that you would like to say hi to?
No, like I would have previously said like my odd dis supervisor, but like I'm back at the department. So, and I've seen the director of the DaRin Butz program really recently. I think I'd probably say hi to like everyone from the Equator Research School because I took part, and that was a really, really sort of like cool thing, and it was really nice to sort of meet loads of other people doing geography and geoscience.
Cool. Yeah, we're a fun bunch. That's geography lot, aren't we? So that sounds really cool. So social media. So once again, give a plug to the research one, but also if you're happy to mention your one as well, because if people, I guess, want to get in contact and say, hey, this is a geography, sounds really cool, because you are, and they want to follow you. So give those 2 social media accounts for us.
Well, so the project Twitter is at Alder in Arctic. Twitter doesn't allow you to write lots of words in your username, so I had to cut out the. My own is at mharding 110, and yeah, please feel free to reach out to me about like any of this, or if you want me to talk to people about like what I do, because I think universities don't do a very good job of telling you like what possibilities there are with.
It's
geography.
Crazy, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's because the world's your oyster, really.
Mm-hmm.
And Ellie Barker, Curious Geographer, I really do think you could have a wonderful chat with Millie. So I know Ellie's listening, the wonderful Ellie Barker. So I think it's so inspiring that the work you're doing is so interesting. I think it's really, really going to show, and it's not just the work that you're doing, but the journey that you've undertaken to get to where you are now, and then I think it's very inspiring because you've got young people who like, I can't do it, I can't be that person, I can't be the person who's doing this research or whatever, and yet here you are, despite folks like myself and you and lots of other people having this imposter syndrome, thinking why am I here, I shouldn't be here, or I'm never going to make it, but we're still doing these amazing things. So folks, Millie is a really good example that don't give up on things that you might you're trying to achieve, because you can do it, and you will feel from time to time that you're out of place or you might not deserve it, because that is normal, it's human, and it has a word, imposter syndrome, as we've already discussed. Millie, this has been so thank you so much for reaching out and coming on the podcast. This has been fantastic getting to know you. I really am going to follow your work. It's so fascinating me, someone who's interested in climate change and things like that in particular. And let us know how hopefully you'll get on that river in Alaska.
Yes, I hope so. And yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for having me. It's been such a great experience. And yeah, it's been really cool to sort of come on and like talk a little bit about what I'm doing sort of in my day-to-day.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening. We hope you had fun. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe so more stories and experiences can drop into your favourite podcast app. If you fancy being a guest or have any feedback, follow us on Twitter at coffeegeogpod and send us a DM. Or you could email coffeeandgeog@geogramblings.com. Until next time, keep geogging.